Received some breaking news. This is following on from the discussion we've just had earlier on by Balwant Singh Rajoana and the decision for the execution on the 31st of March. Now, the breaking news has just come in via the Tribune News Service, and I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs of the news article, and we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves. Tribune News, Patiala, March 15th. The Punjab Jails Department has refused to execute the order of a Chandigarh court asking the Patiala Central Jail authorities to hang former Chief Minister Beyant Singh's killer Balwant Singh, claiming that they, Punjab, have no understanding with the Chandigarh administration. At present, Balwant Singh is lodged in Patiala Jail. Following a written request by the DGP Jails, Shashikant, to the Punjab Home Department this afternoon, the state government is now exploring legal options as to how the execution orders by the Chandigarh court pertaining to the hanging of Balwant Singh Rajoana could be sent back without being executed. So I'm not going to read the rest of the article, but there's more to this article anyway, but the crux of it is the first two paragraphs. So basically, there's a technicality that's arisen. So perhaps I can turn around to the people around me and by Sukhbir Singh, I mean, if you want to come in there and any comments?
On the surface of it, it sounds like a good development. That there's some sort of break or some sort of stop in the process. However, in discussion between ourselves, I think we've pretty much agreed that it's a technicality. It might even be a tactic on the part of the Indian administration just to drag out the situation a little bit further, perhaps to in a way fragment the support which is beginning to gather around the world on this issue. A very good way of turning people off is by doing this, and the Sangat that's listening at home might start to think, well, actually that sounds okay now, things are happening which are positive. But please, don't think that, consider that nothing has fundamentally changed. This more than likely is just a technicality. So fundamentally, it doesn't change anything. Chandigarh and Punjab, obviously, Chandigarh is a union territory, and again, that's a sore issue for the Sikhs as well. So I don't see it as anything other than at this stage a technicality.
I see. Any other comments? Well,
I'm half expecting a Bhagat Singh style execution where they kill him a day before the date that they give us. But again, yeah, so it's important. I don't know if I'm not entirely clear. So he's not going to be executed within Punjab.
I think it's just a technicality. At the moment, it's discussion. It's not saying it's not going to happen. I think just it's almost like a spanner in the works, literally, nothing more than that. But as far as the rest of it goes, it could still take place if it's revoked or if the technicality is overridden, I suppose. So it's not stopping the execution in any way. But it's something that's stalling the process. But is it deliberate? Is it not deliberate? That's maybe what we want to discuss.
Well, it does seem. I mean, going on the discussion we had earlier on, it could possibly be that Punjab, because of the recent elections, are worried about their image, and so they don't want to get involved in this kind of a thing.
But there's no denying there's political dynamics behind this.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that perhaps, I'm not sure how it works, but perhaps it's a county court or something. They've now said that Punjab cannot do this execution, but you'd think that they would know that beforehand. It's not like a new law has been issued in the past day or something.
You'd say that, but executions, I mean, like we've said, they're fairly rare. 24 years, we haven't seen an execution in Punjab. Believe it or not, I think there's a lack of hangmans.
Not a legal execution.
Yeah,
plenty.
Of course, yeah, legal, like a legal state execution. But there's apparently there's no hangman. I think there's only one or two that exist in the whole of India. The last hanging that took place, the hangman had to come from Tihar, from Delhi, into the Punjab region, 24 years ago. So, maybe they're not so clued up on what they can do and what they can't do. Baji,
the other thing I would say is, I think maybe they're testing the waters to begin with. I think it always happens in India that they put out feelers to feel the emotions of the community, to see if the community is still quite in touch on what's going around. And I think they've obviously had feedback that there is a lot of emotion, people are aware of the situation, and they are going to be raising awareness around the whole world. And I think maybe this has obviously put them back a little bit. And like I said, these technicalities come about, maybe in our favour. But the core issue, like Bais have said, do not lose the momentum behind it. The worst thing the Sikhs always would do, okay, now the case is being a bit more stabilised, we can now back off. That's always been our weakness. I think we need to continue our pressures. If anything, use it as a bit more of a time to build up our clout, to build up a relationship with our local MPs, with our local representatives, and work with them more closely. And anything, at the end of the day, whatever, like you just said, the lack of hangmen and so forth, to be honest with you, these situations, in India, they can pay anybody any money and get anybody to hang anyone. Again, I think these could be reasons for them looking to get out of the situation. But overall, I think
they'll have to tread carefully because it will be a high-profile hanging. So if you look at it that way, I think they will have to tick a lot of boxes in order to get it. So I think they will have to tread very carefully. They will have to have an experienced person.
That's unless he tries to escape and is killed in a police encounter.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's...
Anything's possible in India. That's
Yeah.
one thing we've got to be quite, real about. But, at the end of the day, I think, this news is going to develop. It's going to develop more and more. And I think our contribution as a community will help. And I think if we continue our pressures, continue our work, it will come through.
Interesting to know, what do you reckon the reaction is in India on the ground there? I mean, obviously we've reacted as UK Panthist-minded thinking Sikhs, but be interested to know what's happening on the ground in India.
I think, in Punjab, I think people are not as vocal as we are. We can come out in front and say it. I think a lot of behind-the-scene work does go on. We've got to give India credit as well. There's a lot of Panthi Jathebandi in India that do work, under the radar, do their bit, and they try to work within the legal logistics of India. And I think they obviously are applying pressure as well. We can't just sit in and say, well, the question they do a lot of work. And even we say the Badal administration, I think even he must be thinking about, Sikhs up in a party's come in power, a Sikh's going to assassinate.
And you have a high-profile
execution.
Yeah.
So he might be playing on their minds as well, that, do we really want this kind of stigma attached to us? Surely this is the kind of thing. And I think, Punjab has come a bit of a long way. I think Punjab administration does also want a positive image within its surroundings. And maybe this is also another way, maybe distancing them. Okay, we don't want it happening in Punjab. We want it to move out of this area. And this could be one way of doing it.
But these are all hypothetical at this stage
exactly,
as well.
We cannot take at that point.
Exactly.
But the main thing is don't lose steam. Continue the pressure. Use this time to build yourselves up.
I'm sure you have an understanding of the legal system through some of your experiences. Perhaps you see this in a completely different way.
I would go so far as to say it's probably a deliberate attempt to delay the proceedings and echo what you guys have said already. I think it's about stopping the momentum of the community. The community is coming together on an issue. They're raising their voice. It's about reducing that momentum, trying to fragment, as you've said. And we've seen this with many prisoners. I mean, with Bhai Singh constantly missing court dates, judges not turning up, prosecution not turning up. It happens in so many cases. Cases drag on and on. I mean, look at Bhai Balwant Singh. He's been in prison for 17 years. He was originally sentenced in 2007, and it just goes on and on and on.
I'm not wrong in saying, was it Bhai Balwant Singh original sentence a life sentence?
No, it's a death sentence. So these things drag on and on and on. So it is deliberate attempts within the Indian judiciary, and we need to look at the fact that there's a 400-year backlog of cases. So they don't have literally. Literally. These are Indians' own figures. So they don't have the capacity to deal with these issues. It's a very high-profile case, and what you said about the current Chief Minister of Punjab, Badal, I mean, he was a political figure in the 80s, in the 90s, all through the insurgency period, all through the resistance movement, so, and he's recently, just today, in fact, appointed Sumed Saini as his DGP of police, so I don't know, I'd raise serious concerns, the fact that this is just a continuation of what we've seen over and over again, deliberate attempts.
So it's almost predictable in a way that there would be spanners thrown if the work.
Just put a dampener on the community's efforts to galvanize their support and just to, like you're saying, put the issue on the back and people think, nothing needs to be done now.
Do you think it's deliberate though? Like Sumed Saini, when you think about that character, you think like surely the administration would be aware this guy's got so much backlog, he has got so much negative publicity against him. Why would you want to include him in your cabinet again? Why would you want to bring him forward again? What kind of sense is that? Or is it in a way a threat to the people? Look, we're still here and we're still willing to carry out what we did back then. Maybe it's a way of controlling maybe those political parties who are still quite active.
In that, only time will tell. We've seen what Samir Saini is capable of, extrajudicial encounter killings and this kind of stuff. So, I mean, who knows? He might have had a change of heart and might decide to become a good person, but only time will tell. And I think what you guys are saying, it's about the community becoming as much aware of these issues as possible, and really trying to galvanize the support and educating ourselves, really, and not losing the momentum.
But you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the appointment of Samir Saini as DGP just reinforces the fact that there's complete arrogance on the part of the Indians. There isn't a will there to try and soothe the sentiments of the Sikhs, and we can see Izzar Alam, other police officers who were rewarded and are now given. Izzar Alam came to the UK, I think, about 3 years ago. He's set up as a I suppose a model Indian police officer, and what kind of a country is it where a police officer serving DGP who's a convicted sex offender is actually regarded as super cop? I mean, it's one of his lesser crimes, to be honest, but it is an actual conviction, and it's only a conviction because the woman that he molested happened to come from a particular, a powerful family,
Influential family. Yeah.
Exactly, but it does beg the question that if this kind of man can do this in fairly in open circumstances, it's horrible to think, but what was this man doing with prisoners, in closed confines?
So these are statements. I mean, they're effectively they're sending messages and signals.
They're constantly sending messages. So the fact that Kamal Nath is still a cabinet minister, the fact that Jagdish Titler, Sajjan Kumar were both given election chits for the 2004 election, they're just consistently telling us, they're teaching us that actually you don't have a say. So when a high-ranking minister of the Indian government can say we will eradicate 20 million Sikhs and the world will never know about it, they can do it. They can say it because they don't have any sense of fear with regards to what we're capable of, or the international community, to be honest. They are bothered about their image, but they think that they're able to stage manage things to such a degree that they can still do it and get away with it.
And that's where we play an important role, I suppose, and the media plays an important role. The Sikh channel plays an important role as well.
I think, media does play an important role over this. One of the big things which we need to take from this as well, that we've got a lot of hidden diamonds within our Panth, which we don't even know about. They are even in the jails, or they're in places which we don't know. And then when these situations come about, we find out how great some of these individuals are.
Bible is a prime example. I mean, just to research on him in the last 3 days, I mean, what an amazing personality.
Yeah.
You know, someone I didn't even know about, and almost feel connected to him over the last two days. Just looking at his videos, and I felt this morning I had to see the video, one of the videos again of him taking Amrit, because I found that it's very inspiring.
So these individuals exist, and I'm saying these are the individuals who we need to hold on to. We can't let them go, because right now, if we were to say that there's a leaders or thing, there's nobody walking the streets anyway out of the main political parties who can be a leader of the Qawm, but maybe they're sitting in the jails, and if they do get hung tomorrow, then we've lost out on another chance.
Recognizing that, though.
That's the thing. That's where the awareness has to be created, and I think like these kind of programs and everything, we have to bring the status of these individuals up,
because it's
they're not just criminals.
Yeah.
They have done something for the.
Because in the future, what will happen is just like Sukha Jinda, just like any other Shahid, like Bhagat Singh, like Udham Singh, you look back then, and that person becomes an iconic figure. And that's all it remains, an iconic figure, almost like you want to sing songs. Because there'll be Tadiwara about this, if this execution goes ahead, there'll be Tadiwara about Bible One Singh in the future. There'll be kathas, it'll come into competition. We'll see posters, we'll see T-shirts. It'll be merchandised. Almost. In a way, does it do justice to or rather than if he was living, and we were able to use him. Not use him, but he was able to benefit us through his
for what he's done. So he's pretty much creating the awareness, like what Bhagat Singh did when he was in jail. When he let the media know. I don't know how exactly. I can't recall, but he would do and say things which newspapers would write down and then spread the message across, and that's why he was executed earlier than he was supposed to.
He became very high profile.
Exactly, which is now what's happening to Balwant Singh, simply by him saying and having those particular qualities of wanting to die rather than just accept injustice. He's put himself on a platform, and I mean he's raised
such a message which any one of us couldn't do
Of course, yeah, definitely.
without even saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not been on TV, and yet everyone seems to know what he's standing for. So it's incredible. I guess in that kind of, if you think about it like that, perhaps him dying would be a good thing, because he is achieving, like what Bhagat Singh did, something which can't really be measured, and you can't really understand what that would mean. Whereas if he were to be in jail, people would forget about him. To be frank, you know.
I can see that. The question that does arise, what is our duty? Is back to what before we finish the show. You know, what is our duty?
We can say that he's already proved his point. So I mean, no matter what happens, he's an icon and is a hero. I mean, tomorrow if he requests that his death sentence be reduced down to a life sentence, he doesn't. That doesn't reduce our status of him. We still revere him because we know what he stood for and what he does stand for. So
that's a good point. Amrit, anything you know?
Yeah, I think very interesting point. Whether he should, well, whether India should actually execute him for him to prove a point. I guess they would be preventing this execution for him not to become a martyr, for him not to become a Shahidi, right? Yeah. Because that is the status then he will be elevated to, as you said, there'll be Dudley Vichar, etc. The merchandising, the whole machinery will start. That machine will start then on him as well. I think it's a point that we keep saying is raising the awareness now. We shouldn't really slow down the momentum. These programs are great, but how much awareness can we raise? And I think we all have a responsibility and a duty to educate ourselves. It's a shame that we have to wait for Facebook statuses or for the announcement to be made that he's going to be executed at the end of the month before we actually click on and become aware that there is, as you mentioned before, a jewel, sitting in a prison awaiting execution, who's willing to donate his eyes.
We've only mentioned that once. I mean, that is such.
It's a moving statement. Yeah. It's a deeply moving statement. I personally, I think we shouldn't be allowing this to happen to anybody. The death sentence, we don't have, as human beings, we don't have the right to take another human being's life.
If you bring it to the context, if this is your sucker, let's look at it. Let's say we have emotional bonds with our sake. Yeah, if this was your sucker, you would do everything you can.
Absolutely.
So, regardless of if that person wanted to take on the Shahidi, you would sit. And his sister, is it Bibi Kamaldeep Kaur? Is it? I mean, she's pushing for it, even though Baisab himself has not really backed it up.
And I think what I'd say on that point is that it's. I see where you're coming from, and I think we shouldn't really be thinking of it as sake. We shouldn't be saying, well, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji gave his life for a different cause altogether. He was Guruji. We can't get to that status clearly, but it is that thinking is what we need to take away. That we need to do everything we can as human beings to protect other human beings' human rights, and that's the point I was.
When I was talking to Paibal B. Singh earlier on today from SOPW, Paibal B. Singh Baines, and his comment was the fact that he goes that what we have to get the message across is that we always react. We wait for something to happen and we react. That's how, like you can use the word machinery. That's how it works in us. Yeah, there should be safeguards in place. There should be some kind of system in place where we're constantly working. But perhaps maybe that's our awakening. Maybe that's how we're going to take this forward.
So there were some people over here today that I heard talk, and you've got so much information. Maybe what we lack is like a repository, and there are some websites out there that are trying to achieve that. Sikhi Wiki to name one, but they lack that credibility, and maybe we need people who have got the knowledge need to be more proactive in distributing that knowledge and making sure that any, I don't know whether misinformation is the right word, or any information that exists that's not correct, be taken away from the community.
I mean, often when you see a negative press release come out against the Sikh community, which is often the case anyway with Indian press releases, we find very little combat in return. We do very little retaliation. Simple little things like readers' comments. You have an opportunity in every single article, on every website, to put a reader's comment in there, and often that's left to other people to even further compel the article that's anti-Sikh anyway, and make it worse and worse and worse. And yet, we have to have a team in place that are going out there, reviewing the press releases that are coming out there, and putting the Sikh perspective forward and making sure that's taking place. And I think that lacks at the moment. And we're not doing that.
I personally think that at the moment the Indian government doesn't have the capacity to carry out this execution. I don't think it's something that they want to do. I think if they did do it, I think when the movement was much more active back in the 80s and in the 90s, it was a different age. Mobile communication and internet-based communication wasn't as prevalent as it is today. People weren't connected globally via internet networks. And no matter how much the government tries to put these things and lock these things down, it's never going to...
Cover-ups are harder now, basically.
Yeah, and they're never going to be able to stem the flow of communication. The world's fundamentally, how we communicate is fundamentally changed forever. So I think that, that in the 80s and the 90s, with that lack of communication, people were, this is in India, by the way, not even in the UK, where the communication was stronger. In India, people didn't have telephones yet. We had thousands and thousands of people coming out from their villages, word of mouth, people coming out and supporting the movement. We had thousands of morche, we had thousands of people participating in morche and voluntarily going to the jails. And now that we've got global communication, our community is in a much better position to act and in a much better position to educate itself to these situations. And I really don't think India has the capacity, because we have got the advantage
because this is a new technology. It's a new form of propaganda, of spreading information, and not only the Indian government, but the Western governments themselves are playing catch up on how this mechanism, this form of information is actually working. Nobody really understands it. You're absolutely right. I come back to a point I made earlier about the Arab Spring, the way that arose, and that revolution happened in a matter of weeks, let alone months, which is completely unheard of for revolutions to happen. A government can crumble under that. Kony 2012. Now we spoke about that earlier. All of a sudden, this person is on everybody's lips, and that's happened overnight. So yes, you're right. Governments are playing catch up, let alone the Indian government. So let us use this to our advantage, and we need to, as a community, maybe think about it. And individuals need to step up. Individuals out there in this diaspora need to step up and think about how they can, help bring the community together.
What you're basically saying is the infrastructure really exists. We're not delivering, or we're not perhaps we're not joining the dots. We're not understanding how to use that infrastructure to our advantage, and deliver.
The point I want to make is that lots of Sikhs don't participate in such things. They don't help out things.
Why?
But they label themselves as good people. They do a bit of charity and whatever. And some things in my mind from Gurbani, Tirath tap daya dat dan jeko pave til kaman sune mane man kita pav antargat tirath malna. And people don't often understand what that means, which is that you can go on pilgrimages, you could be a very generous person, you could be a charitable person. But the thing is, if you look at Osama bin Laden, to his children, he was a giver. He was a very generous person. And if you get so people like that have these characteristics, but because you can be a very evil, a villainous person, but still be generous to some people. So by saying you're a good person, it's very subjective. So that's when Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, "Sunay manne man ki tabao." Listen to what the Guru is saying, believe in it, follow it, do it with love. Then you can do these things. If you have love for humanity, you can't call yourself a good person. No one is willing to accept that they're a bad person.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
an easy statement to make.
Exactly. And Guru Nanak just put it straight out there that you can call yourself a good person. You can go to pilgrimages. You can do as much Japji Sahib or anything as you want. But you're also going to have those vices.
Yeah.
So unless you fully listen and follow what the Guru is saying in its entirety, you can't call yourself a good person.
The whole qualities of Simran, Barni, Rani, Bani, and whatever you want to call it, it manifests in your actions. It manifests in what you do. And I think, the danger we have at the moment, probably get accused of being very judgmental in saying this, but I think, the Rani Bani is there, the Naam Simran is there, the Barni there, everything is there. It's not manifesting into any good, into any collective,
positive.
yeah, you know, and that's quite dangerous at the moment, I believe. Anyway, politically, anyway.
To answer your question directly, why aren't more people sort of getting more involved? I think is we don't understand that. Well, I say we, but I myself only recently understood that within Sikhi, it's not only just about you're saying, you know, just doing your Naam Simran, having this appearance. It's also being political, being very, and you have to be an activist. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean you have to be aggressive. You have to be violent. We did a great show, and we discussed it when we were talking about the Bala some weeks ago. But I think we can touch on that point again in saying that we have to take a very political role as well, and we have to become a lot more aware about humanity and what our role is towards humanity as an individual, and then grow that out into the community itself as well.
I think that's a fair point, because if you bring this down to a human aspect, I mean, we should just have a human feeling for the individual. I mean, it's very inhumane to be hanged. You know, we can't just think that it's a good. It's not romantic, isn't the noose inhumane? I mean, he could potentially be suffocating for 10 to 15 minutes in that noose. So I mean, that's why I think, I mean, everybody should still feel, regardless, everybody sitting at home and everything, see it as a realistic, as realistic as it is. It's inhumane, and this thing is, he doesn't deserve it. I mean, no, we don't want our brother. I think it should come back to the Sarkars. I think we should think of the family which is trying to stop with their son, their brother, from being hanged, because they don't want him to die inhumanely. They want him to live a life. And, you know, I think that's what we should also be seeing.
The argument there is justice. I'm talking about this from you know, people might not like what I'm going to say here, but the argument there then is that Beyant Singh's family, okay, Chief Minister Beyant, now their family, I think they've raised objections in the past to the saropas that have been given to Dilawar Singh's family in the past. So obviously to them, like you said, he's special. Like you said, it's the same to that scenario, the Osama bin Laden scenario. You know, to that person, that's going to be someone special. So you're going to get that opposition. But the person who's not connected to this story, doesn't understand the backdrop and the background, and the background behind it, will automatically think, well, he killed someone, so surely he deserves to die. That's a very oversimplistic way of looking at justice. That's what we have to communicate as well. That's what we have to be able to say. You know, we have to talk about Faisal's life. We have to talk about the whole, set the scene of what was going on during the regime of Beyant Singh, and then put this all into context and explain it.
Yeah, and I think we can't forget our long and extremely valuable tradition of Shahadat, of Shahidi. Our own gurus, Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib, Guru Arjan Sahib, they became Shaheed. They gave up their life. That's the ultimate gamble that they could have played. That's the ultimate price you can pay, and that's the ultimate way of saying I believe in my message to the point that I'm willing to give up my life. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, his 4 sons. I mean, these days you don't want one of your sons. If somebody had 4 sons, they wouldn't want one of them to be involved in as a resistance movement. Exactly, we say our Sakhe, Guru Gobind Singh Ji's whole family, his father, you know, his children. We got to understand we have a very long tradition, and when you get to that level of your Sikhi, of part of your Rani Bani, then it doesn't matter. You can look at what happened to the followers of the Gurus, by Satidas, by Matidas. You can cut them by pieces, by money. You can burn them alive. You can saw them in half. It doesn't matter to them, because they are part of this world, but their whole existence is there to give an inspiration and an example. Not everyone can become a Shaheed. You know, we've got millions of people in our Qawm, millions of people, and how many of them have become Shaheed? You know, a lot of people have, but look, in today's time, we need these people. I mean, even in American traditions, you got, like, people say the tree of revolution is renewed by the blood of the martyrs. I mean, who said that? Jefferson or somebody like that said, you know. Thomas Paine, you know. So it's such a valuable tradition, and a nation that doesn't value its martyrs.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, but if you think about Guru Arjan Dev Ji Shahidi, we have to then be we have to be Miyamir, and we have to then at least go there and, you know, do what we can do. Miyamir went to Maharaj and said, at least, you know, what can I do? Should I destroy everything? That's what we still have to be as a Qawm. We still have to be doing we play our role. We know that maybe Shahidi is somebody, is in someone's karam, but we also have to do our karam. And if that means that we have to, you know,
I think
make noise
people are
about it.
going to become. This what problem in our armchairs. We become very complacent, and we think, "Chal, he wants it. So why should we have any involvement?" And it's a way of convincing ourselves. Like we said, we always need one excuse to convince us not to do seva. We don't even need 5 or 10 or whatever. One excuse, and we will not take anything forward. So that's another thing. But
I think the only thing I basically yesterday when I was watching that program at the Tamils, how they basically the Tamil Tigers had the last kind of week, and so how they were basically annihilated by the Sri Lankan army. One thing I couldn't stop thinking, and which was this only happened 3 years ago. I was sitting there and I was watching this. 40,000 people. We are saying, like a lot of the Sikh human rights groups say, that 40,000 Sikhs were killed within 10 years of the whole 84 to 1995. These were Sri Lankans. 40,000 Sri Lankans are killed within a week. 3 years ago, and the international community did nothing. Yep. And I was looking at the dialogue between Miliband, the older brother, and obviously with the Sri Lankan president and so forth. And they knew they were blatantly lying. They knew where the safe zones were, but they were still targeting them. The Americans could see it from their satellite visions. It was absolutely black and white that they were carrying out human rights abuses underneath the international community.
So swept under the carpet.
Yeah.
The international community.
And this is what I can never understand, Unfortunately, I know we have hope. We always have this kind of concept that we need to not rely, but we always hope that maybe if the wider community see what's happening to us, there may be some pressure which we can apply and maybe get something out of it. But it seems to me, even if 84 happened today, I don't think there would be any different reaction. Fair enough, there would be. The only thing I think worked in the advantage of Sri Lankan people were the actual Fojis, the army personnel, they were making videos when they're shooting people.
Yeah, they were making trophy videos.
And of rape and so forth, and children and everything, killing the leader of the Tamil Tigers' son, a 12-year-old son, through the heart. And you're thinking, looking at, they've actually, shown the world what they've learned from India. Sri Lanka has learned how to apply the tactics of human violation from India, very clearly. And they were saying in that also in that documentary that India gave its full support to Sri Lankans to finish off the movement. Yeah. And it's so black and white. And the Chinese, all these powerful people that we look at in the international community, and I see them now all as murderers in white suits and white kurta pajama which they're wearing around. These people are committing crime against humanity, atrocities in white suits, and going to dinner parties, looking the whitest of the white, but yet they've got more blood on their hands than any individual ever have. And I think, what it comes down, sometimes it comes down to the fact, if you want justice, you go and get it. You got to go and get it.
I'll also say, with regards to that, we say something that shocking happened in the world just 3 years ago. But I think if we look at it, since 2001, so since September the 11th, it's a very different world. And governments find it very easy to demonise a sector of their community that is causing them problems. So we saw what happened with the Chechens in Russia and what's happened with the Sri Lankans. And governments have used this. So there isn't such a thing anymore as a liberation movement, a freedom movement. It tends to always be cast as a terrorist or a secessionist movement. And therefore, governments really looking after their own, just maintaining the status quo. So we shouldn't think too strongly, really, in terms of us fitting into a Western model of thought. Things change. So Nelson Mandela at one time was regarded as a terrorist. Now he's seen as a hero. So we can't change with the wind. We shouldn't change with the whims of fashion. We should stand by what we believe in. And living and dying. Of course, it's easy for me to say, sat here. It's easy for us to say his family knows. He knows what's going through his heart. But I would say we know from ourselves. And if again, what's Baisab giving to us, and we look from Japaji Sahib, and it says, there will be people emancipated because of what he's done. His action is an enlightenment for everyone. So it's hard for us to say that he shouldn't go through with what he's decided to do.
make a point on the unquestionable right of self-determination. I mean, we all know with the Sikh people that we're a sovereign people, we're unique. Our culture is different, our language is different, our philosophy on life is different. It's the same with the Sri Lankan people. It's a 2,000-year-old civilization. Scholars have said, their language is the only surviving classical language that's still in use till this day. And to question their right to determine their, and to oppress them so brutally in a country where the country that they were predominant in, and there's this 1,000-year-old monuments that were built by their people. So you can't question their right. Same with the Sikhs. Look at the British government, respecting the right to self-determination of other nations, but and it's what Bais have said. It's all about your politics, and it's all about regional politics. It's all about maintaining the status quo, and we shouldn't be afraid to rock the boat, especially when it comes to our inalienable rights.
Many Sikhs are though. I come across many professional Sikhs that I know within my kind of circle, and they always say, we've got to give Sikhs a very positive image. And sometimes you think, the positive image.
They take it too far in the sense that it's too extreme.
If we take a stance by our principles, whenever a Sikh will stand by his principle, he will be seen as being extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you're talking to to let's say the average Sikh, and they will say we need to provide a positive image in the media. We need to look as positive role models. But unfortunately, like you guys are saying, we have our own tradition, our own values to live by, and maybe it is time for all of us Sikhs to realise, what. Let's live by our traditions now. Let's live by our values. We've tried living by other people's values, other people's traditions, and what's it got us? What help have we got from them? And we've compromised so much, that we haven't got nothing back. And I think it was a good practice for us as well. Look, we'll work with this and see how far we can get. And I don't think we've got that far. And I think it's about time we think, we've got a culture, a heritage, a political stance that we are aware of within our culture. Let's take that up on, let's build on it. And I think, we need to start raising our questions to our community.
I think on that note, I think we're getting pressure to stop the show now. Anyway, so our time is up, unfortunately.
Just one last bit. Please, website support balwantsingh.blogspot.com. That's going to have all the one single point of contact, so you'll be able to see what's going on, if there are any protests happening, if there's any letters to MPs, if there's any petitions to sign, any kind of background and everything, any kind of updates, go to that and it will be your single point of contact.
No, I think you said it all.
I think unfortunately, we're going to have to call it a day on that. Like I said, there's so much to cover and we didn't get a chance to cover everything. Saying that now, we'll call it all a day. Anyway, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.